It's California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Glad you're still with us. Our guest, Lois Capps. She's a member of the United States Congress representing the beautiful Central Coast of California. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, Brad.
Absolutely. I want to speak with you about our schools. I have children in elementary school, and there still continues to be a great amount of fear as a result of what happened in Connecticut. I know that you had worked with some members of the Senate to try to get a part of the Manchin-Toomey bill to include some school safety provisions. It ultimately died on filibuster, but you're not done. You're pushing forward.
We've just started. But let me first say, Brad, congratulations to you and to Charter for bringing this opportunity to those of us who serve in Congress right here on Capitol Hill.
Right.
You're here for National Cable Association, and you decided to do some very hands-on, as I might say, opportunities. And it is a real honor and pleasure for me to be with you to talk about subjects that are so important at this very moment to our constituents.
Right.
And you bring up one that is on the minds of every parent and every teacher, every school administrator, every day, I must say.
Literally.
Sandy Hook, we shouldn't need that incident to tell us that we need to make our country safer in our communities and certainly in our schools. And the part that you talk about in terms of gun safety is the school safety readiness piece. I come to that as a school nurse.
Right, I knew that.
Coming to Congress, seeing firsthand how vulnerable our children are and how important it is to equip our schools with the kind of protections that they need.
Now, as you may know, the National Rifle Association has proposed that armed guards be placed at every school throughout the nation. What's your sense of that proposal?
Well, I've talked to teachers who are repulsed by the idea. We want to educate our young people in nonviolent ways of resolving issues, and the presence of weapons, and even the talk of arming teachers. No, that is all well and good, but there is, and we do want law enforcement at the ready.
Sure.
But the most important element is to keep the schools ready and to educate children how to respond, how to look for signs of trouble, and what to do about it.
Right. At the same time, part of your bill, which you are moving forward with, would create an alliance between the federal government and local school districts to provide matching funds.
Well, you know, I've spoken with our local school officials, and they tell me they know exactly what they want to do to increase security at the school site. They already have the interest in establishing these relationships with law enforcement. It's their budgets, as you know, California has taken such severe hits in education that there isn't any money at the local level, and our communities are hard pressed also to have the resources to provide the safety officials on the campuses. This is the perfect place for the federal government to step in. My bill allows for grants to be applied for. I've talked to my schools who say they're eager to do that. Let's have that opportunity for them.
So the issue becomes, when you talk about guns, it gets so bollocksed up in everything that is Washington politics. Can a provision that arguably is as simple and common sense as this one, simply a funding alliance, make it through the House, make it through the Senate?
Well, that's the big question. And I would hope that we could do that. The Senate has acted, unfortunately, not to the right effect, but we're not giving up because this issue is too important, and we want to attach it to something that's going to make it through to sign into law.
For our viewers on HLN, we thank you for joining us. For our other viewers, we'll be right back. Congresswoman, I want to continue and speak more specifically about other types of violence. It can be through guns, it can be through other mechanisms, and that deals with domestic violence. As you may know, there was recently a decision in California that dealt with rape by impersonation. An archaic law specified that the impersonator somehow needed to look towards becoming a spouse as opposed to a dating partner. The California legislature is focused on trying to revise that archaic law. When you look at federal law, there are also distinctions made between spouses and those that may be in a dating relationship. Talk to us about how you're trying to remedy that situation.
In the same legislation package, which I hope we can do all together in a more comprehensive way in terms of gun safety, I want to include the violence that often happens between a dating couple or a couple not married. That clearly has been left out in language that's been proposed. And if we're going to remedy and address safety issues with the use of guns, we certainly want to include this important piece. That's my amendment.
What about when you look at relationships that may be same-sex? Because that, again, so often, even if a bill is revised to include a dating relationship, it will presume a man and a woman.
Right.
Are you able to push forward on these issues? You represent California as a significant population that may be in same-sex relationships.
And we just need to be real clear about what we do and specify that it can be same gender or the opposite gender.
But what about your friends on the Republican side of the aisle? Are they willing to sign on to legislation that is so specific on that issue?
If we look at the facts and see where violence occurs, it would not be fair to leave out one important relationship.
I want to, if I may, speak about immigration. Is that all right?
Of course.
Because there is no doubt that you represent some of the most beautiful territory in the state of California, which includes significant agricultural areas. I think about Paso and wine country. And immigration reform does seem to be gaining momentum in the Senate. There's a bipartisan group that's come together. In the House, there's some concern that even on issues like agriculture and farm worker programs, it could be a challenge. Talk to me about this.
Well, if my colleagues in the House will do what I have done in the last few weeks, and particularly this last few days that I was in the district, to pay attention to our employers, and many of them are landowners, farmers, they are telling me very clearly we have a broken system. Everybody knows our immigration system is broken. Talk about the companies with high-tech employees and our graduate schools. In my district, it's Cal Poly and UCSB producing top-notch scientists who then their student visa runs out and they are not able to stay and add to our economy.
It's so interesting you mention that, because when you look at immigration reform, some folks feel as if it's the cause of the left, it's the cause of progressives. But
this is about our economy.
Right.
This is about our workforce and making sure that we can stay on the cutting edge. We need good workers in our fields and also in our high-tech companies.
But the question is, when you speak about some of your friends on the Republican side, many of them represent districts that may not have high concentrations of immigrants, documented or otherwise. They may not have high concentrations of agriculture. And so this issue is just not part of their vernacular, part of their lexicon. They're not being pressured at town hall meetings. So do you reach out to them? How do you educate?
Well, first of all, it's increasingly a part of their constituency.
It's true wherever you go.
Demographics are changing, but it's a matter of fairness. And I would just say, when our systems are archaic and outmoded, it's time to modernize them, and that's what we seek to do. We're all concerned about border security. The first foundation of immigration reform is border security, and actually that's happening. But we also saw what happened when the president decided to go ahead and, with an executive decision, allow the young people, well, some of them are older too. The dreamers. They just came out of the shadows and were able to enter the workforce and to complete their education and add to our economy. This is an economic issue, first and foremost.
But as we speak today, the Senate is moving forward with a comprehensive plan. The House seems to be moving forward with a piecemeal plan.
And that's the point we have to insist upon, that it be a comprehensive reform. That's what my constituents are telling me very clearly, that this will only work if we do it all together. And let's get this done now while we have the opportunity to do that.
Her name is Lois Capps. She's a member of the United States Congress. My name is Brad Pomerance. You are watching California Edition.
As of 2011, how many foreign-born individuals were living in the United States? Over 25 million, 36 million, 40 million, or 51 million? In 2011, over 40 million foreign-born people resided in the United States.
It's California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance coming to you from Washington, D.C. We're joined by Susan Davis, member of the United States Congress, serving significant portions of San Diego County, which of course is on the Mexican border. And you have been looking to try to improve relations between the two border towns. Talk to us about what you're doing in terms of easing border walls.
Well, we like to think of it as a binational border.
Okay.
And the communities certainly, I think, are come together and are coming together every day in a whole new way.
What does that look like, though, in the era of fears about border security?
One of the things that we know actually about the border in San Diego is it's very secure,
right,
actually. And I think some of the changes that they've made in the past, the infrastructure, have been helpful, which is why even when we think about a bill that would change our immigration policy for our country, the idea of infrastructure and making certain that we have trained Border Patrol agents, but more than that, that the whole system works for people. Because the reality is half of the people that are coming back and forth across the border are Americans. They're working in Mexico, they're doing business in the United States, both, back and forth all the time. So we need to improve that. And right now, the wait time is just so long. People can have a Century Pass. Doesn't apply to everybody, and some people choose not to have one. Most people choose not to have one. But we think that the Mexican government has been cooperating. They have actually built a link for cars and people that are going south, but we still need to do our part, and that's where the next piece really comes from.
And let's talk about then the grander issue, which is immigration reform. We know that as the bill is being fashioned in the Senate, there is money, $4.5 billion for border security. Could it be that part of that money could be used for a program like this, which would work to improve commerce between?
Well, we certainly think it should. Because in addition to the agents and the security measures that are going to be taken and the change in policy, if we don't have something that works for people, then they're not going to be able to use it, and they're still going to waste their time. It's been estimated that about $3 billion is spent basically sitting in 4-hour wait lines, and the cost of about 40,000 jobs. That can change. The president actually has money in his budget to help with the second or third phase, really, that we're talking about at the ports of entry.
And more generally on the issue of border security, there's no doubt that that is something that we hear often. It's a hue and cry from forces throughout the nation. Do you feel as if our borders are secure now, and with the proposed immigration reform will become even more secure to the extent that we can truly move forward on comprehensive immigration reform?
Well, what the bill will do, I think, and depending upon some of the wording in the Senate and certainly the House, and as we're able to bring those together, the whole thing here is to know who's in our communities.
Of course.
And I think that part of what the border crossing can do in the Century Pass is to identify those people who are doing very legitimate business. They're doing it all the time, and they should be able to travel back and forth more freely. The policy itself and the immigration bill is a way to allow people who want to be part of our community, who want to contribute. They are contributing. They want to contribute more, and they want their children to be able to grow up in a world where they're not frightened that their parents, could be taken from them. That's what we all want.
But at the same time, some of your Republican colleagues, Mr. Issa, Mr. Hunter, have been a little nervous about, for example, easing the border walls. Can you convince them?
Well, I think they just need to look at the numbers and the number of people who are crossing today. There are a lot of things happening in Mexico that they're making a difference as well. It's not just our economy, but it's their economy.
For our viewers on HLN, we thank you for joining us. For our other viewers, we'll be right back. Congresswoman, I want to speak with you, if we may, about the sequester. As you know, the sequester went into place in March, and for a lot of Americans, they haven't necessarily felt the effects of the sequester. But I think it's fair to say in San Diego County, that's not the case. I recently spoke with Toni Atkins, a member of the California State Assembly. She's apoplectic about the sequester because San Diego is so reliant on the defense industry. 25% of San Diego County dollars come from the defense industry. As a congresswoman representing significant portions of that county, talk to us about the sequester and how it's impacting your home.
Yeah, well, and certainly as someone on the House Armed Services Committee
Please,
as well,
right.
and the ranking chair of the Personnel Committee. Of course,
you know it all, right?
I'm very involved, but we're talking largely about civilians who are going to be furloughed for about a day a week, somewhere in that neighborhood, or actually, I guess it's about every 14 days.
Right.
So that's significant, and it's significant to those folks because that means less income, and it means that the work that they're doing might be delayed. They might not be able to get back to it. We have people who work very, very hard in our intelligence area and in other areas that are affected also.
And what many of these civilians are saying is, wait a second, it took less than 48 hours for the Congress to remedy a furlough situation for FAA traffic controllers. But what about me? You were able to manage the meat inspector crisis. What about me?
I think that's a legitimate thing for people to ask. I think the reality is that the burden in terms of transportation was really great and affecting middle class folks and everyone who has to do business. So I think it was important to try and fix that, although personally I don't like the sequester. I don't think anybody likes the sequester. And it was man-made. The Congress did not have to go there. And had we come together and been able to negotiate and really come up with a balanced approach for the entire country, then we wouldn't be dealing with a lot of these cuts today.
And I'm wondering if those that were opposed to the sequester overdealt their hand in saying the sky will fall with the sequester, because as we've seen, other than the FAA crisis, the sky hasn't fallen, and so the country isn't really talking about the sequester. We hear complaints about Head Start or Meals on Wheels, and so without this hue and cry coming from places other than San Diego, how do we get the Congress to move for those that are most concerned about the sequester?
Well, we think that all communities will feel the brunt to a maybe not a great extent like San Diego, but they will certainly feel it. And it is true sometimes that communities don't move until they actually feel like we're at the brink. Unfortunately, that should not be the case here, because I continue to believe that we have a difficult problem on our hands, but it's not unsolvable. And what is needed is the Congress, now the House and the Senate. What we need is the Speaker of the House to appoint conferees to a budget negotiation and to be able to move from there.
But what's so interesting to me is I've spoken with Republican members from California, Mr. McClintock, Mr. Royce, Mr. Calvert. They seem to be concerned about the sequester. So these are Republican members that are concerned. We have Democratic members that are concerned. Why no movement?
Well, I think that's a good question.
Is it leadership? I mean,
it is absolutely leadership, because right now all we're waiting for is to move forward and have conferees come together and come to the table.
What about using this man-made crisis, as you call it, to set up a grand bargain? Because there's no question the tax code is frustrating. There's no question that entitlements are frustrating to different segments. Is now the time to really try to tackle the deficit in a way that we can look at the issues on a grander scale?
It's a perfect time to do that, and that's why I'm not sure why people are not moving in that direction. I'm hopeful. There always are times that you begin to see that, a little movement here, a little movement there.
Dinner dates, golfing dates, do those help? Mr. Obama taking friends out?
I think it is about leadership, and it's, it involves the president, of course, but I think that we have a situation here where some people just really don't want success. And that doesn't make a lot of sense. So we can spend much smarter than we're doing, and we need to do that. We need to do that in the defense area as well as other areas. I'm a big supporter of research. I think that we need to continue to work with the National Institute of Health and not, say that, we're going to let all the other countries make all the big changes.
In the final analysis, in our final moments, do we see immigration reform? Do we see sequester reform in this Congress?
I hope so.
I hope so. Her name is Susan Davis. She is a member of the United States Congress representing significant portions of San Diego County. My name is Brad Pomerance, coming to you from Washington, D.C., and you are watching California Edition.
Since 1900, in what year did European immigrants peak as the largest immigrant community in the United States? 1900, 1920, 1940, or 1950? The nation's 12 million European immigrants in 1920 represented 11.3% of the U.S. population, that community's largest percentage since 1900.
Welcome to California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are coming to you from the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. We are in the Cannon House office building, and we are joined by Gloria Negrete-McLeod, one of the newest members of the U.S. Congress. How's your new job? We've spoken recently, but still, it's only a few months in.
Well, it's very different than California,
yes.
But you know, it's a continuance of my public service.
No doubt. You served in the Assembly, in the Senate. I want to speak with you about your constituents, because you are now returning to your Inland Empire district as a member of Congress. And so when you hold your town hall meetings, and you've held several of them, your district work days, I have to think the issues they're discussing are a bit different. So what are they saying to you?
Well, I haven't held a town hall meeting per se. What has been coming through the office has been the constituent services are mainly issues that affect people's lives. Veteran services, immigration, the Medicare, right. Social Security. Those are the issues. Has anybody talked to me about the budget? No.
Which is so interesting, because there's so much discussion about the sequester and the impact of the sequester. When the sequester went in, there was this notion the sky was going to fall, but we haven't seen that, and that has presented a challenge for those that oppose the sequester, because other than the air traffic controllers, which that issue was resolved fairly quickly, but there are issues that impact Californians, Americans, that deal with the budget. And I know one of your concerns is a proposal by the president that deals with an acronym, and it's CPI, and it's known as the chained CPI. Please talk to us about that, ma'am.
Well, I'm opposed to it because...
What does it mean? CPI is the index in which there's an increase. It's a cost of living increase,
yes.
Essentially.
Yes. So what it is that just what you said.
Right.
And so I'm opposing it because the lives that are impacted are those on Social Security.
Right. And so when you think about those that may be obtaining Social Security or other social service benefits, in the whole budget discussion, there has been muted calls. When we think about the sequester, sure, we fixed the meat impact inspectors, furlough days, the air traffic controllers, but Head Start's being cut, Meals on Wheels is being cut, the new chain CPI program is being cut. So are you able to be a loud voice for those interests, because we're not hearing those?
And neither am I in the district. I think what always puts me in awe is that we can cut services for people and very few calls. We cut something on animals and suddenly we get a flood of emails. For example, the slaughter of the horses for meat.
Yes.
We had in my office here, in my own personal email, I had 8,000 emails about the slaughter of horses.
Equine meat.
Yes. And now we're going to cut the Head Start. How many? Nothing.
And what's stunning about that, whatever you may believe about social programs, studies indicate that Head Start truly impacts lives. And I was speaking with Mr. Schiff recently, a member of Congress as well from California, and his concern that the cuts in Head Start today could impact a generation or two down the line.
It's a very important program for those children, you know, to get exactly what the Head Start means, to get a Head Start,
right.
to be ready for kindergarten, to be ready then for the school. And so hopefully that impaction on their lives that early on will then carry through the high school, perhaps keeping them in school longer,
so
letting them graduate.
Are you hopeful that Head Start will be saved from the sequester?
I hope so. You know, I didn't cause the sequester.
You weren't here yet.
I wasn't here yet, but we certainly are here. The new group is to try to remedy.
For our viewers on HLN, we thank you for joining us. For our other viewers, we'll be right back. Welcome back, Congresswoman. I want to speak with you about veterans. You have been a voice for veterans since your time in the Assembly and the Senate. You introduced one bill that was your first. What was your first bill? I can't remember.
1251. It dealt with getting grants for the institutions, the public institutions. learning institutions.
I understand.
And then allowing them to find money to have the veterans go to the programs that they need, also for tuition and all those kind of things.
And now your second bill
My second
also
bill.
deals with veterans. Why don't you tell us about it?
Okay, it's 1623, and this is actually one of 10 bills by a whole bunch of members.
Oh, I see.
Because there is a backlog for veterans getting services, for veterans getting their the cases that are pending before the VA, the claims that come from all the way from the Vietnam to the Gulf War.
That must be very frustrating for you as well as the veterans themselves. These individuals served our nation. They came home and they feel as if, I mean, I have, these are benefits that were presented before me and I can't access them.
Yes, so there is a great backlog, and like I said, this is one of my colleagues are also carrying bills, but this was mine, to try through the internet to get these claims adjudicated much faster.
And so I come back to the sequester. I mean, we know that the sequester has been cutting without regard to the program. It's across the board. Are you able to get a program like this pushed forward in the era of sequester?
Well, sequester is one thing, but these claims have been ongoing for many years. So how do we fix it?
So talk to me about how you get a bill like this move forward. When you were in Sacramento, you were part of a significant majority. You're now in Washington, where the Democrats are in the minority. That's not to say you can't work across the aisle, but it's a challenging time.
So how it works is,
You're right, please.
You submit a bill, and then you have to get a whole bunch of co-sponsors to come on. Then that means that there's a whole lot of people that are in favor of your bill. Then you present it before the committee, and then you hopefully the committee chair will be agreeable to move your bill forward.
So are you getting Republican co-sponsors as an example?
Absolutely.
And talk to me about that process, because when you were in Sacramento, I know you did work across the aisle, but it wasn't required, I guess you could say. You could pass a bill as a Democrat when you were in Sacramento. Now it really is. I mean, it's very
You really have to work. And I've been asking all of my colleagues on the committee to co-sponsor my bill, to come on as a sponsor. So then I'm hopefully then it'll move forward.
But in this era of increasing partisanship, with a bill that may be as nonpartisan as this one, are you able to prevail on your friends in the Republican side to work with
the committee, yes. So then hopefully we can get it off the floor.
I want to talk to you as well, if we can, with your permission, about immigration. There's no doubt that immigration is an issue that touches California in a very dramatic way. I think about your Inland Empire district, which not only has a significant immigrant population, but some agriculture as well. I think about some of the areas near Riverside. I know you don't represent Riverside, or San Bernardino. So what are you hearing from your constituents about the efforts towards immigration reform?
Well, there's a whole lot of advocacy groups out in the district that are hoping that this immigration reform will go through. It impacts lives, so many lives, I think, but a lot of people are very concerned about the reunification of families, because there are very many undocumented people who actually have legal citizens as their children. Their children are legal citizens.
Of course.
So when you break up a family, you leave those citizens here and the undocumented goes. So reunification of family is very important to all of the advocacy groups that have come to the district.
And what are the agricultural interests saying to you? Are you on the Ag Committee?
I am.
You are, so I really want to hear what you're hearing.
So just this week we had a group of California growers from the Salinas area that were talking how important the immigration reform bill is to them. One gentleman said that last year he had 1/4 of his fields go. He lost all of those fields because there was nobody to harvest.
Wow. And I've heard from many individuals that the fear amongst those not favoring immigration reform is that these immigrants are taking jobs away from citizens. But what we know statistically is that Americans, for whatever reason, are not taking these jobs.
Well, it's not Americans, it's anybody doesn't want these particular jobs.
But some can be high skilled, and the immigrants are taking those jobs.
Well, they are. They're taking the high skilled are people that have been brought in. However, the lower skilled jobs are the ones that go waning.
Her name is Gloria Negrete-McLeod, member of the US Congress. My name is Brad Pomerance. This is California Edition.